Hey guys, what's up? It's Monique. Welcome to my channel and I hope you're all doing fabulous today. Today I want to tell you a story. It's very weird and creepy. This story happened to a family of mine, so every part of the story is real. It's not made up, it's not fake. You can let me know what your thoughts are after telling you the story. So family members of mine moved into a new house many years ago. They thought it was their absolute dream house. It was perfect for the two of them and their 4 younger children. Initially everything was great in the house. They loved it there, they were very happy, and a few months into moving, things started to get a little strange. My aunt, who was a stay-at-home mom at the time, used to spend her days taking the kids to school and picking them up and cooking and making sure the house was being run smoothly and that everything was fine. And she had this routine every evening after putting the kids to bed. She would go to the kitchen, make herself a nice cup of hot tea before heading off to bed. A few months after being in this new house of theirs, she, as per her normal routine, went to the kitchen, made herself a cup of tea, and in their kitchen they had this back door leading out to the yard, but it was one of those very old wooden doors and it had a key in it, and this key was always in the back door. It never got removed. It was just inside the back door that she would lock every single evening before heading off to bed. So this particular night she had made her tea, she was getting ready to head off to bed, and she heard this clicking sound. She could hear it was coming from the door, and when she walked towards this back door, the key was not in the door. She looked on the floor, she looked around thinking maybe it had fallen out and couldn't see it anywhere, so she went to her bedroom where her husband was laying in bed and reading the newspaper, and she asked him, "Have you seen the back door key?" And he said, "No, I don't really ever use that door or go to that door." She proceeded to look in the children's rooms and just couldn't find this key anywhere. So that evening she slept a bit uneasy, more for the fact that it was now a safety issue that the back door was unlocked and she had no way to lock it. This key going missing started a series of events in the house that were pretty much unexplainable. Very weird things started to happen. After the key had disappeared, something happened individually to each one of her children. Let's start with the oldest child, her oldest daughter, who was 14 years old at the time. During this time period it was school holidays, and during the school holidays the oldest daughter would often have friends over for swimming, because the house had a very big swimming pool in the back, and to watch movies and just to keep her occupied. And this specific day she had some friends over, they were swimming, and when it came time for her friends to go home, she had realized she did not bring enough towels outside for all the friends to dry themselves off. So she headed back inside and went upstairs where there was a little bedroom. There was just a little one bedroom, one bathroom upstairs that they kept all of their linen and towels there. So she went upstairs and she opened the closet to get some towels out. She bent down, she got the towels out, and she felt an extremely intense squeezing sensation on her shoulder. She got a huge fright and was obviously in a lot of pain, that she ran downstairs crying to her mom that somebody had hurt her shoulder. Now, a mom's initial instinct is she started shouting at her daughter's two brothers and saying, "Why are you hurting your sister?" because they used to bully each other a lot, obviously, as kids do. And they said, but Mom, we weren't even around, we were playing outside. We didn't know she was even upstairs. So that evening, when the oldest daughter was having a bath, her mom went into the bathroom just to check if she's doing alright, and on her shoulder, she saw 4 perfect fingerprints on her daughter's shoulder. Very red and quite painful looking. Almost as if somebody had squeezed her like that really hard. Her mom freaked out because now her child is hurt by something that she doesn't know. She wasn't sure what had actually caused this. So she confronted her husband about it, and he brushed it off, saying it was probably one of her friends or brothers that was trying to prank her. He was a very skeptical person when it came to anything out of the ordinary or anything he couldn't explain. So he brushed it off, and she thought he's probably right. Somebody was probably just playing a trick on her and squeezed her a bit too hard. Her second child, her son, who was 11 years old at the time, also during the school holidays had some friends over often, and this particular day he had one friend over whose mom was going to come and join his mom for some tea and cake later in the afternoon. Now, her son, even at 11, he loved to bake. He enjoyed making cakes and cupcakes, and so he and his friend decided they were going to bake a chocolate cake for their moms for their afternoon tea. So they were making their cake, and being children, they were throwing each other with some flour and some cocoa powder, and they were just covered in all this stuff. And once the cake was almost ready, his mom said to him, listen, you need to go to your room and just freshen up, change your clothes, wash your face, because you're full of flour and baking goods. And so he went to his room, he changed his clothing, went to the bathroom and started washing his face to get all of the flour and everything off of his face. And he had soap and stuff all over his face, and all of a sudden he heard this laughing in his ear, extremely close to his ear. And he got such a fright that he washed off the soap quickly from his face and looked behind him. He explained that this laugh that he had heard sounded like a very deep giggle in his ear. And so he turned around and he said, ha ha, very funny, thinking it was his friend playing a joke on him. And his friend screamed from the kitchen, man, are you alright? Like, who are you talking to? I'm still in the kitchen, I'm still busy decorating the cake. And immediately the young boy thought, okay, that's extremely weird. And nonetheless, he told his mom about it, and this incident she kept to herself because she knew her husband would then still say something or have a logical explanation for what is happening. Her third child, also a boy who was 8 years old at the time, had this toy. I don't know if you guys would have something like this in your country, but where I'm from, there's this little black motorbike. I can't really say it's just for boys because girls use it as well, and nowadays they make them in pink. So the traditional one is a little black motorbike that you use your feet to push you around. And in their house they had this very long passage that he used to ride up and down a lot because he liked the smooth surface. And that particular night he had finished riding his bike, he left it way at the end of the passageway and went to bed. So as per her usual nightly routine, my aunt would go to the kitchen, make herself a cup of tea, and she heard what sounded like her son's little motorbike like riding in the passage. And she thought, well, what is he doing awake? I had already put him to sleep. And she stepped out of the kitchen and peeped down the passageway, and the bike was moving slowly towards her, and then all of a sudden it fell down. But her son was not around. She ran to his bedroom just to find him fast asleep in his bed. And again, the thought started kicking in of what is going on in my house. There's something not right. Her youngest child, who was a little girl, who was 4 years old at the time, used to take naps often in the afternoons between lunchtime, and you know how the smaller children are, they like their naps. She used to take naps often in the afternoons, and again, one particular day, her mother went to go and check on her. She used to take naps in her mother's room, so her mother went to go and check on her to see if she's still alright, and she was laying on her mother's bed with her eyes open. And her mom said to her, "Oh, you're awake, let me take you and we'll go outside." And she picked her daughter up, and her daughter just all of a sudden pointed just to the end of the room where her mom had this big dresser, mirror type of table, and she just pointed to this table. And her mom said, "What's wrong? What are you pointing at? Like, do you want something from there, or what's the matter?" And the little girl just said, "Man." And her mom looked at her and said, "What man are you talking about?" And the little girl turned to her mom and she pointed again and she said, "Mummy, there's a man." And her mom got chills all over, and she thought, no, enough now. Something's happened to each one of my children. I need to speak to my husband about this and make him understand what is going on. So that evening, while laying in bed, she discussed all of these things that had happened with her husband and told him, "Please, you need to believe me, but I can feel something's not right." And she was very surprised when he turned to her and he said, "You know what? I actually do believe you." He claims that he had had a few incidents of strange stuff happening to him himself as well in the recent weeks. He proceeded to tell her that the previous weekend, when she had taken her children to her mother for the day, he had decided to stay home on this particular Saturday because he had worked very long hours during the week and wanted to just relax at home. And he had gotten up and had his shower, made his coffee, and went to the living room to read his newspaper, which he enjoyed doing. And as he walks into the living room, their old antique rocking chair that they had in the corner was moving by itself, back and forward. And he recalls that no doors or windows were open for there to be a breeze or anything that could be moving this chair, but being the logical man that he is, he thought, no, there must be a reason why this is moving, and he didn't think anything of it. Until a few nights later, so because him and his wife are both smokers, they had this glass shelf in their bathroom with a glass crystal ashtray at the back of the shelf. And he recalls one night during the week that he had walked past the bathroom and heard this rattling sound coming from the bathroom, and he turned around and he went back to the bathroom to see what it was, and as he walked in, this crystal ashtray, which was quite heavy, fell from the shelf and it shattered into pieces. And he said what was weird is that the shelf is very wide, so it would have had to rattle and move quite a distance before it could even fall off of the shelf. And there was no movement in the house there. The country I live in, we don't have earthquakes or anything weird like that. So from that day, and not being able to find a logical reason behind this, he also started believing what his wife had been telling him. They had noticed that all these weird things started happening in their house ever since that key in their back door had gone missing. Now, let me just say, my aunt did go and she did get a new key for the door for safety reasons, but the one that was in the key had this little key ring on it, and You'll understand why I'm mentioning the keyring a bit later on. So they did get a spare key made for the door. But in general, in this house, there would just be weird vibes constantly. They recall feeling watched, they recall feeling followed. They would hear footsteps, there would be doors opening and closing. It would just be weird stuff that would be happening all the time around them. And the fact that all of her children had also been affected by this bothered her a lot. One specific day, once she had taken all her kids to school and her husband was at work, she came home and was just going to do the regular stuff around the house that she usually does. And she kept getting this feeling of an uneasiness in the house on this particular day. A very heavy feeling, a very negative feeling, and just like something was there with her. And she said eventually this feeling got so bad that she went to go and sit outside. And she was just sitting on the porch and getting some fresh air and clearing her mind and everything. And she said the whole time she was sitting outside, it felt like somebody was watching her from the inside of her own house. And that for me is a very uneasy thing to hear somebody say. That night, after the day that she had had and the uneasy feeling she was having, she again was in her kitchen and heard this clicking noise. And she distinctly remembers that sound sounded very familiar. She walked over to her back door where she saw something laying on the floor, and she looked down, and that key that they had gotten made was laying on the floor, and in her back door was her original key with the key ring on it. Now, let me also just add that after that key went missing, her and her husband and the children, they searched that house from top to bottom to find that key. They searched the yard, they searched all the rooms, they could not find that key anywhere. But this particular night, that key was back in the door. And the other key that they had gotten made was now laying on the floor. She freaked out. She ran, she woke her husband up, she grabbed her kids. She said, "We are getting out of this house right now. I can't stay here anymore. Something is not right." So they took the kids, they got in the car, they left to her mother's house, and they stayed there. She went on to do a little bit of research about the house that they had bought, and what she came to find via a neighbor is that a couple years prior to them buying the house, there was a couple living in this house, a husband and a wife, and the husband, apparently they were very nice people, and all of a sudden the man that was living in this house became a little bit crazy. Furthermore, she learned that one particular night this man went into a full-blown anger rage. He had a huge argument with his wife, whom he later on in the evening landed up murdering in that house, and proceeded by taking his own life in that house. After finding out this information, she decided she's going to put the house on the market, and that the best thing to do for her and her family's sake and their safety is to move out of that house. Unfortunately, I don't have any word today on what has happened with the house, or who is living there now, or if anything else has been reported there. I just remember being a child and her telling me the story of what happened in this house. And I remember it scared me really badly to know that things like this, which you only really read about in a book or watch in a movie, can happen to the people that you know personally. Anyway guys, let me know what you think of that story. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day further, or morning or evening, or wherever it is, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and I'll speak to you again soon.